Good morning, everyone. Nice to see everyone this morning here and also folks joining remotely. Today, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the intimacy of our practice. This practice is very intimate, and we may not always think of it that way, but it is. In fact, this practice is all about what this life is, this experience is before we get into conceptual thought. And before I started practicing, I lived much of my life, the great majority of my life, in conceptual thought. And it was buffering me from the experience that was all around me, that was going on. And I remember even trying to become more present in my life and in my practice, and I conceptualized that. I'd be out, walking my dog and in a beautiful setting, and I think, I just don't know if I'm really being present. I think there's more to it than this. So I'd conceptualize that. And over time, began to realize just how much I did that. But in this, what I want to talk about today is getting beyond our conceptual thought and living a more, if you will, raw, direct, naked experience of moment by moment. And there's a koan that I'll share. It's a koan that's was particularly impactful in my life, and it's one that a number of you have worked with and certainly heard about before, but it's worth hearing again, I believe. And that is case number 20 from the Book of Equanimity. Jizo's not knowing is the most intimate. Master Jizo asked Hogen, "Where have you come from?" "I pilgrimage aimlessly," replied Hogen. "What is the matter of your pilgrimage?" asked Jizo. "I don't know," replied Hogen. "Not knowing is the most intimate," replied Jizo. At that, Hogen experienced great enlightenment. My first probably moment in my practice when I began to get a certain feel unexpectedly of not knowing and what it was really like to experience life in a more raw way without my conceptual thought came after a week-long session that I had. It was the first week-long session I ever did. It was at the old Lafayette Zen Center. And there was a gentleman that I was assigned to as a roommate for that entire week, and we didn't talk before the session started. We certainly didn't talk while we were roommates because we were observing noble silence. We both did that. But after the session, I went up and introduced myself to him, and as we were talking a little bit, I said, wow, I feel like we're best buddies after this week. And he said he had the same feeling, and we were both reflecting on it a little bit, and it was odd because he had no idea what I did for a living, nor did I what he did. I didn't know some of the hobbies that he had or that I had, didn't know much about his personality. He didn't know much of anything about my personality, and yet it was undeniable, it was palpable what I felt as far as a relationship with this gentleman and what he felt with me too. Okay. Now, in fairness, have we kept up through the years? No, we haven't. But I just felt that kind of a quality about that, and didn't understand what was going on there. I certainly liked it because it was a very loving kind of sensation, but I didn't know what was really going on with that. And I'm going to put a little conceptual thought to that right now. I think what was going on was that the stillness that we both experienced during that session of not talking, not having lots of things going through our mind. We were both practicing with a koan, who am I / mu koan at that time, and so we were very, very focused. I do know that from conversation with him and the conversation we had together. And, it occurs to me now that what was probably going on, to conceptualize it, was that our minds were becoming reasonably still during that period. And we couldn't interrupt that stillness by talking to each other or asking questions about what we did, things we liked, were we married, were we not married, any of that kind of stuff. We were just sitting right next to each other for that whole week, right? And to the point of this koan that I was just referencing with Hogan, this idea of not knowing is most intimate. We weren't trying to not know. I wasn't really after a goal in that first week other than survival. I had lots of pain, lots of aches going on in my knee and my hips, extremely uncomfortable physically for much of that session. I hung in there through it. I did it, but I was in a lot of discomfort. And I don't know if he was or not, but I was. But I was doing a lot of raw experiencing of that pain, maybe not with too much chatter about it, but a lot of direct experiencing of that physical pain. So anyway, that stillness of that week seemed to translate, or not even translate, to manifest for us as feeling this kinship, this closeness, this intimacy, actually, from that experience. Now, there was something else that happened during that week. And that was, I remember on Tuesday of that week, the sesshin started on Saturday. And by Tuesday, I was really struggling as far as discomfort. And, but I just was experiencing it to the best I could. And on Tuesday, we had lunch, and we were going to have an afternoon session of sitting again. And I was just sitting out in the living room area there of the old Lafayette Zen Center, having some tea. And all of a sudden, I felt this incredibly intense love out of nowhere, from my perspective. But it was so strong that it was overpowering. Okay, and I looked around. I was looking for the Roshis because I didn't know what was going on, and I found Roshi Shinko. And I remember she was at the top of the stairs, and you went down the stairs to the basement area to do Dokusan. And I just kind of looked at her, and I was like, God, help me here. I don't know what this is. So it's a powerful, incredibly intimate feeling of love, and it was overpowering. Okay, so anyway. Had Dokusan and with her, and had a chance to experience that more with her, and ask some questions about it. But it was certainly not something verbal at all that I was experiencing. It wasn't like, oh, who am I? I got to figure this out. No, it wasn't that at all. It was just this overpowering wave that had taken over at that moment in time. So again, it was a taste I have of this intimacy from practice, from not having all this verbal conceptual dialogue going on in my mind, and then experiencing it. And I will say that at that time, after meeting with her, I thought, okay, I'm going to try conceptually to think of somebody that I really don't much care for in my life. And so I ran a couple people through that I'd had difficult experiences with, encounters much younger in my life, quite frankly, and I tried to just see what that felt like. And I couldn't start disliking them. I just couldn't do it. Anyway, that was an experience I had with this coming from not knowing. And I've noticed in sesshins, whether they're week-long sessions, zazenkais, weekend sessions, we always end with a closing circle. We always end with the closing circle. And people Some people talk, some people don't. Either way is fine. But there always seems to be some people that have had a rather loving, tender experience, and they do seem to want to share it. And that happens for me too. I like to share things during the closing circle. And sometimes it may be more, seem more outwardly people just experiencing gratitude or tenderness in that environment, some more than others, some don't talk at all. But it tends to happen. It tends to be quite consistent that there are some tears of joy and experience in these settings. And at the same time, I'm guessing that from my own experience in part, that when we leave the sesshin, when we go back into our more workaday kind of world and experience, we pretty quickly can find our minds getting busy, getting more caught in our own concerns, worries, anxieties, whatever it is, dealing with problems, et cetera, in our life. And so this idea of this intimate practice, I don't mean to imply that when we have anxiety or worries, preoccupied life, that can't still be part of this intimate thing. We can feel it. It's a body-centered practice. Zen is. And so even when we have these things that we wouldn't choose to experience, part of our practice certainly is being able to be with those feelings as well. And then maybe over time being able to more and more drop the storyline from these bodily sensations. And at times we probably can't. I know I certainly can't all the time, but at least catching myself having these very strong feelings and thoughts going through, and then trying to settle into the feelings of my body and experiencing intimacy in that way. But going back to the closing circle thing, I've thought about any number of times about, okay, so what's it like for other people when they go back into the world away from the sesshin atmosphere? And I've talked to some folks about that, and certainly from my own experience, I hear a lot that it's difficult to maintain that sesshin mind after these retreats are over. And some of the feedback I've gotten, and certainly from myself and from others, is this idea that, man, I'd like to keep that sense of oneness, that sense of this very, very intimate connection with everyone and everything, not just people, but insentience as well. That I want to be able to keep that. But the irony is, of course, is that trying to defend, trying to protect this sense of intimacy does one thing. It moves me away from the intimate experience. It creates a distance from me and this thing that I've treasured in my life when I have experienced it very, very closely. And I don't want it to end, but at the same time, when I start to try to protect it, to create it, whether it's on the cushion or if it's in my daily life, trying to make that happen, or even avoiding certain situations or people or events that I think would tend to upset my Zen-like approach, I just create a wall, really, kind of one brick at a time, separating myself out from everything else. And the whole thing that I wanted to do in my practice, after being in practice for a while, was I wanted to have more of a sense of connection, more of a sense of this intimacy of everything, whether it's the cushion I'm sitting on this chair and feeling that, or whether it's seeing each of you today and this carpet underneath my feet, whatever it is, that's what I wanted. And yet at times I found myself being concerned about trying to preserve that rather than to just be in the raw experiencing of whatever was going on. And for me, that intimacy that I so appreciate and enjoy, which can be applied to my own bouts of anxiety, as well as it can be applied to just feeling this loving connection with you or other folks or beings. That when I try to force it, when I try to make it a certain kind of experience, I sabotage myself. And again, I create this wall, this thing separating me from intimacy rather than just this direct experience. And one of the things that I have found that can help bring me back to a period of connection is my own ability to be vulnerable. Okay? Try to be vulnerable. If I'm trying to present myself as anything other than the reality of what I am, who I really am, that does not serve me well, and it doesn't serve the universe very well either when I'm trying to be something that I'm not, okay? Whether it's me giving a talk, or whether it's me doing SAMU, or whether it's me commuting between Boulder and here, whatever it is, you know, that opportunity, that reality of this intimate life, it's always there, but I can get removed from it by trying to create something different than the raw experience, even of anxiety or whatever. Some of the things I prefer not to have, but they can be my intimate experience in that moment. Okay. We're in Ongo right now, and it's a time that we can work to increase our focus and increase our connection with everything. And when I was in the first time that I ever formally signed up for Ongo, I'd been practicing for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years or something like that, maybe just 1 year, I'm not sure. But I had a rubber watch back in the day. Rubber watch has been replaced by phone now. Don't have a watch anymore. But I had a rubber watch, and I would set perhaps some of you have done this, I'd set the timer to go off every 2 hours. Every 2 hours, beep, 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 beep. And the reason I did that was I wanted to kind of wake up, or not kind of wake up, I wanted to wake up. What was going on at that moment every 2 hours? And that was rather helpful. And in that particular Ongo, I remember I doubled the amount of time that I was going to be sitting on a daily basis. And that was helpful for me too, on feeling more of a connection with everything. But the little watch trick every couple of hours, perhaps, like I say, you may have done the same thing in Ongo, but that worked at times, pretty well. But going back to this idea of intimacy of life as it is, what I do now, for better, for worse, in Ongo is, first of all, I don't have a watch anymore. I could set my phone to go off, I guess, routinely, but I don't do that, drive the battery down. I don't do it. But what I can be sensitive to, and what I do work with, not always 100% successfully, but I work with this, is that every time I get triggered, when I feel something makes me uneasy, when I feel judgmental, when I think this person's not doing something right, when I think, oh gosh darn it, embarrassing, I can't believe I did that, right? When I'm driving on the highway and I get tweaked as far as somebody yelling at me because I wasn't paying as good of attention maybe as I should have at that point at the time in the highway setting. Any of those things that when I catch myself feeling that way, and I don't always catch it, when I do, that for me is the beep, 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 beep of the watch. And quite frankly, in my case, for me, that is a better wake-up call than the watch was, because it became easy over the 3 months of Ongo, relatively easy to push the beep, beep, beep of the watch away and go back to whatever it was I was concerned about, worried about, stressed with, not stressed with, whatever. But this thing, it's just what's going on. And it catches my attention quite easily. And then I have the chance to do whatever I want to do. But one of the things, and Ashish and Roshi talked about this last week, this idea of being able to take a 1 minute or one breath meditation, just and in the midst of things, if not at the precise moment I'm feeling that, depending upon the situation I'm in, I can do that, and that is extremely helpful. And for me, again, helps me be more intimate with the sensations in my body, and also intimate with the story that might be going on my head. And then I can come back to my hara, come back to, Tetsudo gave us wonderful talks on shikantaza, and took us through lots of techniques that can be, utilized, implemented in our daily practice. So I try to do that in this practice. One of the things that also has been helpful for me to not build a wall when I seem to be challenged in either in my formal practice of sitting on a cushion or in my other parts of life, other parts of my practice off the cushion, is the relationship that I have, the connection I have with doing my more formalized practice on the cushion. Okay, so rather than, I certainly know that this can be very helpful for folks, and it's been helpful for me at times too, of putting focus on, okay, this is my intention of what I want to do when I sit on the cushion for this period, and having an intention sometimes has been very helpful for me. But at the same time, what I find is really helpful long term is to just know that, you know what my intention is? My intention is, and I'm talking about on the cushion now, but it certainly applies off the cushion too. My intention is just to get my butt on the cushion. And I want to get on the cushion every day, okay? And I might even have an intention that I'm going to try to do it X number of minutes or hours or what I'm going to do. But that's my intention. But my intention is not to have a good sit. It's not to wake up. It's just, I'm going to do that. Sure, I'm going to do it the best I can with techniques I know, absolutely, and that's helpful. But the real overarching intention, rather than, when I joined this Zen Center, I've shared this with some of you before, but when I joined this Zen Center years ago, and you had to fill out a formal application, and one of the things it said was kind of what draws you here, and I said, I want to wake up. And I think I actually said, I want to be enlightened. I want to get it, right? So that wasn't, I don't want to BS you. That was what really was a big part of drawing me into this. But I'm just telling you now that what I find very helpful is let that worry about itself. What I want to do is I want to just do Zazen. Let Zazen do Zazen and leave it at that. And it'll be what it'll be. And certainly I can't control it. And if I try to control it, then I get less and less intimate from the other experiences in my life. I put one more block on this wall that is shielding me or protecting me from all of you and everything that's going on. It's like, I didn't watch many of the Star Wars movies, but I watched the first three, and certainly that idea of shields down and being able to open up who I am, to be vulnerable and be open-hearted, to feel your pain, to share my pain, to feel your happiness and joy and love and anger and all this stuff, that's really what I want to do. And I don't always like doing it. And I would prefer that it was all, rainbows and unicorns, but that's not, in my experience, what my life has been, okay? That's not what my practice has provided or how I'm manifesting this practice. But joy, yeah, that I would say practice is manifest that way. And that's not necessarily always happiness, but it is joy. There was a person that I did not work with directly, but anyway, there was a person that recently lost their husband, and this is an example of what I really want to mention here is that absence can be really profound. And an absence of something, we're talking about an absence of thought and then experiencing this intimacy. Well, an absence also in an area of grief can really enable us to open up. And I shared this once before, but I want to share it again because it deals with vulnerability and about absence, okay? And in this case, this woman, her husband had recently died in the last last 13 months had died. And she was, it was so hard for her to just sit at the table that they'd shared for all these years of married life. And she felt such a such a longing, so different, so distant from, wanted so much to have him there with her again. So, she eventually just took it upon herself, kind of had this insight or whatever, and she came over to the chair where he used to sit, and she just plunked in it. And according to her, this was incredibly healing. Just having that intimacy, this intimacy of being with her husband, that was profoundly impactful for her in her grief. But her husband had died this time ago. But it didn't keep her from being intimate with him, having a very real connection with him, maybe a more profound connection. I don't know the details of what their marriage was like, but I would guess that it's probably every bit as profound at times in their married life when they're physically together, right? I was sharing with somebody recently in my life, watch the time here. I want to have plenty of time for sharing. But I want to mention about intimacy in practice too, that I have had times, and and they're recurrent, by the way, where my parents died quite a number of years ago. And but I've had times where, and it's not some like out of body, not that there's, people have all kinds of different experiences. I'm just saying, I haven't had, it's not the out of body, whatever kind of mystical experience where I'm visualizing my dad or my mom or anything like that. But I've had experiences with my dad and mom both experience where I am my dad. I'm just my dad. And I feel like I'm talking like him, like I'm doing things the way he did, like things are impacting me the way they did. And and this has been, I felt it some when he was alive, but I feel it more actually now. Same thing with my mom and my brother who's still alive. I have that experience too. He lives close, fortunately. I get to see him a lot. But experience of really, it's incredible that I am him. And I'm my mom, and I was talking to one of you about in Ongo being able to utilize this as a chance to drop in, not necessarily, I'm not encouraging you to try to have that experience, do whatever, but to drop into this being of this moment. We don't have to wait till we're in a session to do it. Right? We don't even have to wait till we're on the cushion to do it. We can do it anytime. We can choose to do it, right? So I know that, in sesshin we talk a lot about, like in a week-long sesshin, well, wait till day 6. That's when you're really going to be able to, and people have marvelous experiences on day 6. I'm not taking anything away from that. That's wonderful. But at the same time, we do have, I think, more ability than we realize to drop into being aware, Roshi Shinko talked about awareness of awareness. Well, we can drop into that to the best we can drop into that anytime we choose to do it, okay? We don't have to make a big deal out of it and create a barrier there. We can just be living our life. So anyway, I want to close by just emphasizing that, life's not always easy, okay? It can be a challenge, but like I say, it can always still be, this overarching thing can be, in my experience, it can be joyous in spite of some of the challenges. I mean, I went through a divorce, started like 3 years ago, and that wasn't something I would choose at all, right? But it was an ability for me also to work with my ego, with my judgmentalism, with my ideas of the way things should be, the way, hey, when I was a little kid, I never thought I was ever going to get divorced, So I got to work with these things, and so it was what it was, okay? And it was part of my life, and I did a lot of wall building during that time where I felt I'd been mistreated, misrepresented, etc. And that didn't serve me well. Well, what did that do for me, right? didn't do anything for me except create suffering. So anyway, just sharing that too, because I don't want to be Pollyannish about practice. Okay, I want to be real about it, at least what it is for me. So one thing too that does make practice doable and is encouraging, I think, is that we really are all individuals that have Buddha nature. We really do. So you can check that box. You got that done, the Buddha thing. And so it's just a matter of, so coming from that place, seeing other people as the Buddha, seeing ourselves as the Buddha. And I got to think, didn't know Shakyamuni personally, got to think he had struggles in his life. Okay, I hope he did, because that's one of the reasons a more attractive figure to me than Jesus. Okay, my dad was a Christian minister. Jesus is a wonderful example as well. But even when I was practicing Christianity more completely, still I'm totally open to it, and a good something that I feel good about, Christian teachings. But I never liked the idea. It was not helpful for me to see Jesus as some kind of like God thing or whatever. I always saw him, even when I was just practicing Christianity, as a human being that was, wow, he'd done a lot of work. Apparently, he was a pretty great guy, and influenced me and all that. Anyway, so that being said, as I close every little talk with, we keep on doing what we do. We do the best we can. We eat, we sleep, we live the Buddha's life. We pee, we poop, we brush our teeth, we get ticked off, we get joyous, we get happy, we get sad. All these things, right? That's our life. That's our life, and we just do the best we can. And as Shishin Roshi always says, we keep going. What else are we going to do? We keep going, and having the support and love of the Sangha here, and then remotely, and not just of our Sangha, but the Sangha from a more universal standpoint. The plants, the trees, the flowers, the fence out there, this table, all that stuff, all this connection, this intimate possibility for connection. So with that, I'd like to open it up for sharing. We've got some good time to do that. So I'd ask folks to, if you want to, no pressure either way, share whatever you'd like to from your life, and we'll do that.